audio.
This is WCPT
And
820. Where
Pastor
facts
Thurston, if
matter.
you could speak, please.
Sure. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
We have 3 minutes.
ABC.
Okay, I have Pastor
Hope that you all
Thurston
can hear me
talking to
clearly.
you.
Hello, it's me.
Hope everybody's doing well
It's
today.
you. It's your childhood calling.
Hope things have kicked off great for you guys today, and that you had good Thanksgiving,
Oh my
and that
gosh.
you're amply preparing for the balance of the holidays we have to celebrate.
Your fault.
I
The
got
things that
some
happened
good.
to you as a kid,
Praise the
the
Lord.
things you went
Can you
Alright.
hear him?
they were not your fault.
I got him. He's good.
Okay.
2/3 of us.
Are you going to be in
experience
Chicago during the
more
holidays? Or you getting out of
adverse
here?
Childhood experiences.
It's my desire to get out of here. I haven't decided where yet.
I understand. Oh my gosh. I will be out of here.
To tell you that I've got good news.
Oh yes.
And you can be in
I will
charge.
be out.
You can be the author of your own story.
So when I landed back in the States the other day and walked off that plane into this cold weather,
Oh my
I
gosh.
said, why did I come
What?
back there?
And we're live here outside the Perez
I was
family.
like, what?
Waiting for and there they go.
I know I shouldn't even feel this way, but I am like, I am over this. Oh, over it. I was like, what is going on? Oh, it's just so cold. But that's the way it is.
Yep, that's Chicago.
Oh my gosh. But it's, we've missed it for a few years, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, I mean, and I was feeling that.
But looks like mom doesn't realize her coffee cup is.
Are you good? Are you planning to watch the Prince Harry Meghan thing? We're on Facebook Live
No.
now.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
No, that wasn't on my agenda.
Like making sure your
Hello.
kids are buckled.
Unless you recommend that I need to do that.
You know what's interesting? I thought it was interesting, and I've said this publicly, that Oprah is great for pointed. She is an excellent interviewer, and she is great for these pointed questions. But she did not touch. She did not touch him in his Nazi outfit.
You're right about that.
Well,
And I was like, to me, what would be interesting would be his evolution.
We have 30 seconds.
Stopping smoking
Seriously, his
Yeah.
evolution.
Yeah.
How did you end up over here? Now we're about to make him the wokest guy. I'm like, well, I don't know about that. I'm not mad. I'm just saying. I just think it's interesting.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's interesting that goes
Stand by.
untouched.
We're going to go live.
Okay, dear. Thank you so much. Let's have a great show. With the words of our mouths and meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight. Praise the Lord.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change.
We're going to have a great show.
Absolutely.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. It's Election Day in Georgia. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Tuesday, December 6, 2022. We've been waiting a long time to get here. We are finally here. It is now time for the election. Oh. Into 2024. We are already here. Hey, everybody, I'm back. And so now there's this controversy, if you will, about South Carolina and whether South Carolina should be promoted to the front of the pack. They call the South Carolina primary the Black primary, but there's much more to it than that. I used to spend half of my summers in South Carolina because that is where my father's from, and then the other half we'd be in Virginia, which is where my mother's mother was living. So, I got a chance to see that Virginia is a military state, and my grandfather was a veteran, and my grandmother worked at the Veterans Administration Hospital. But I also have seen the evolution of South Carolina. They have manufacturing, they have tourism in the Low Country. There's just a lot to South Carolina, more than it being a Black primary. It is a real hodgepodge of what America is about. It has everything there. The Greenville that I used to visit, where my father grew up, is not the Greenville that I know today. It's just amazing because, number one, it's a center in the United States for the auto industry. That's right. All of these major auto dealers, not dealers, manufacturers have a stake, have a toehold in South Carolina, for example. So there's a lot going on. There's much more to South Carolina than it being a Black primary. But what's wrong with rewarding the backbone of your party? I mean, New Hampshire, Iowa, I think it's important, obviously. But is it not time for us to move things along? We're going to be talking about that today as we discuss what's happening in Georgia, everybody. Greg Palast will be with us because he's saying that, you got to be very, very careful because there are some hidden dangers for Raphael Warnock. That's why we need to get out here and vote today. He gave a wonderful YouTube, and I've posted it on my Facebook page, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. More of you are joining me over there. Please go to Santita Jackson and Friends. Santita, Jackson, and Friends. So please, because I want you to be my friend. Santita Jackson is a landing page. So I cannot take anybody over there. In fact, Facebook has been purging thousands of you down through the years because they have a 5,000 person limit. So do me a favor and go over to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. I had to open that up so that I could accommodate everybody. So let's do that. Let's all be together over on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Everybody call me at 773-763-9278. I want to know what you think about this primary. Just let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know. I want to know what you think, who you think is going to pull it out today. Who do you think is going to pull it out? Because Republicans absolutely vote on election day. So let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. Chicago will have a high of 44 degrees, kind of warm. Showers. Minneapolis, St. Paul, very cold, 27 degrees, mostly sunny. In the NFL, the Buccaneers pulled one out in the last 3 or 4 minutes of the game. Tom Brady is something else, 17-16 over the Saints. In the NHL, the Chicago team, they need to change their name too. We'll be playing the Devils. They need to change their name as well. How about that piece? What's going to happen in Georgia? Well, you know what? Everybody's talking about that today. So let's keep our eyes open, and I want to hear your thoughts in this runoff, this historic runoff. Indeed, the runoff was set in place to dilute the Black vote. Did that happen? Officials in Hawaii have activated the state's National Guard as lava from the eruption of Mauna Loa steadily inches closer to a critical highway. Conservative members of the Supreme Court appear to side with a graphic designer who doesn't want to work with same-sex couples on their wedding websites. Indeed, Justice Alito joked about a black Santa and AshleyMadison.com during arguments in same-sex cases. Very interesting, but it looks like that the 6 justices, the conservative justices, will be ruling on the side of the website designer who does not want to work with same-sex couples. The 10 countries with the least paid vacation, the United States, guess what, is number 2. Right behind Micronesia. And we're the only developed country, as they put it, that does not have a statutory requirement for paid leave. Isn't that interesting? That's right. Italy is aging faster than its European Union peers, but that's happening in all of Europe. It's very interesting. We're watching Europe begin to struggle as their former colonies are on the ascendance, Pastor. You can't make this stuff up. And guess what? 10,000 people signed an open letter demanding that President Biden order paid sick leave for railway workers, because that was compromised out. Because the ruling class won this one, but people need to go on and strike and do whatever they need to do so they can get paid sick leave. I think everybody deserves that. We've been talking, Pastor Stephen Thurston, about the supply chain and how it's broken, right? Well, what didn't get broken? during this supply chain problem that we're still in the midst of. You know what's not been broken? Yes. Global arms sales and deliveries. Boom. How about that?
Oh, we couldn't stop that.
Come on now. You can't make this up. I said, wait. And you all wonder why sometimes I get a little long with my headlines, because I find things like that for you and go, are you serious right now? Yeah, seriously. You can get a gun, but you can't get baby formula.
That's right.
Pastor Stephen Thurston, Facebook Live this afternoon at 3 p.m. at Central Standard Time. And of course, he is the teaching pastor of the Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope, the largest Black church in the state of Illinois. And of course, he is part of the iconic New Covenant family, one of our historic Black churches. Several generations of Thurstons have led that congregation. Can't wait for you to assume your rightful place of responsibility there after you take a little brief hiatus from all this time that you've put in at Salem with Pastor Meeks and First Lady Jamel Meeks. They're a fantastic family, and I can't believe he's going to be retiring, but I look forward to all that he's going to be doing, he and First Lady Meeks, as they move into another phase of their lives. Talk to me. What's the good news today?
Well, the good news is that we can actually have a good holiday. It is a holiday season, as we all know, and it's often said that this is the most wonderful time of the year. That's what a lot of people say, but that's not the case for everybody. And I want us to be cognizant of that. Now, for those of you who are coping with the loss of a loved one, family estrangement, loneliness, financial difficulties, or health struggles, the holidays can be one of the hardest times of the year. And for some, the holidays can feel as if you've been cast out into the cold and forced to look through the window of a happy, loving family. The reality is that many of us find ourselves filled with feelings of longing for things that can never be, such as more time with a loved one that transitioned or a supportive family. Find ourselves swept into memories of holidays past or lost. Fantasies about what the holidays would be like if we had a different life. We find ourselves feeling pressured to hide our problems, put on a happy smile and an ugly Christmas sweater, and attend that awful holiday party. There we smile and we engage in exhausting small talk and do our best to avoid the subject of what we'll actually be doing for the holidays. We buy the obligatory gifts for our friends and even some of our coworkers, after spending hours trying to figure out what they might like, worrying that we might miss the mark. Some of us even host parties and obsess over making our tree look absolutely perfect in a desperate effort to please or to impress others and give the impression that everything is actually fine in our life. See, society has filled our heads with unrealistic notions about perfect gifts, immaculate homes decorated with lavish matching decorations, endless resources to spend, and happy times spent with family. And the truth is that some of us find ourselves exhausted and stressed trying to live up to these social pressures and expectations. But here's the good news. The good news is that I want to encourage you with concerning the holidays, is that I have learned that the most important thing that we can do over holidays is to take care of ourselves. It's not having the perfect house. It's not giving the gift that's going to keep on giving. The most important thing that we can do over the holidays is to take care of ourselves. And I get it. For some of you, that sounded weird because you probably feel guilty putting your own needs first. But here's what I've discovered over the years. I've learned that my own needs are just as important as everyone else's. And if we sacrifice ourselves to please others, it can not only be harmful to ourselves, but those around us as well. So if you find yourself struggling this holiday season, here's what I want you to do. Take time to reflect on how you would like to spend the holidays. Remember, you don't have to buy the perfect gift for everyone. You don't have to go in further debt. Some of us are still paying credit card bills from last Christmas purchases. You don't have to put up a tree. You don't have to decorate the entire house. You don't have to spend hours baking cookies or that famous cake that you're known for, or even attend that family gathering. The most important thing that you can do if you're struggling during the holiday season is to pay attention to your own needs and do what you feel is best for you. So if you feel like curling up on the couch with Netflix or a good book and your pet instead of going to a party or family gathering, give yourself permission to do just that. Listen, it can sometimes be better for your health and your well-being to decline some invitation and just rest. You've been pushing hard all year long. Some of us just need to sit down for a minute. I've discarded some of the holiday traditions that don't bring me joy. I don't force myself to do anything that I'm not feeling up for. And listen, I do not spend time with people I don't feel comfortable being around. Once I started doing this, the holidays stopped being draining, exhausting, and socially challenging and started to become more relaxing and peaceful and even enjoyable. I just want to remind you to love on yourself this holiday season. Maybe that's the gift that you need to give to yourself, loving on yourself. And that means sometimes doing what's best for you. The best thing that any of us can do this holiday season is to be kind to ourselves and take care of ourselves like we would our closest friend. This is the best holiday gift sometimes that we can give ourselves, Santita.
I
Enjoy
love
the
that.
holiday season.
No. I love that because you know what? Do you know that's where I am this year? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to do that. And I thank you for that. I thank you for that.
Yes,
It's just,
ma'am.
you're just underscoring where I am. I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, and you're buying gifts that people are not going to use, and for what? I mean, and you're doing it because you want to see that look in their eye of appreciation. Get over yourself. You know what, Stephen, you and I need to just go out and have dinner or lunch like we normally do and enjoy each other and keep it moving. What?
That's it. That's it.
That's the
Yes, ma'am.
gift. I mean, I've buried several foundational friends over the past couple of years, 2 last week. It's been a tough couple of years for me.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, I miss them terribly. I miss them, but I know that they've gone to be with the Lord. And so they're, hey, they're waiting for me. That having
Yes,
been
ma'am.
said, and I'm here because I got to finish my work. That having been said,
Yes, you will.
I'm doing the things that I need to do. And that's the end of that. Okay.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yes.
That's it, everybody. That's a great lesson. Facebook Live this afternoon at what time?
We're going to shift the time today, and we're going to look at 2 p.m. 2 p.m.
Okay.
Central Standard Time
Okay.
today, and we're going to be focusing on spiritual bypassing. Different kind of topic, because so many people will use God to escape the realities of their life instead of doing their part in the process to move towards healing and change and transformation. So I want to look at that today so that we don't keep falling into that same trap.
Okay. I love that. And how and where can we find you on Facebook?
Stephen Thurston. You put my name in, my dad's going to come up, but you'll also see me. You'll see my picture there. Head over to the page at 2 p.m. And if you miss it at 2, it'll be there. So you can always go back and catch the rebroadcast on it.
Love you, Pastor Stephen Thurston. Sending you much love today. Give my love to your family. Can't wait.
Yes,
wait.
ma'am. And those
And just-
in Georgia, go out and vote.
All right.
If you haven't voted already, go out and vote. Make your voice count today.
Now, that's right. Your fellow preacher and Morehouse alum is running today, and we are pulling for him. I have no
Yes,
shame
ma'am.
about that. I don't need to diminish Herschel Walker to tell you that I'm pulling for Raphael Warnock. Full stop. Period. That's it. Get out and
So
vote,
many
everybody.
people have been concerned about where Deion Sanders is going to work. I'm concerned about where Raphael Warnock is going to work.
How about
And I
that
need him to
piece?
go to work in Washington.
But I tell you, I think we need to understand that complexion doesn't change direction. And that is one of the great lessons of this moment.
Yes.
Complexion does not
Yes.
change correction. Identity politics, I don't care whether it's your race, your religion, whatever space that you occupy, that's not enough. You need to have someone who's going to be compassionate and who's going to do right by all citizens, period.
That's it. Full stop.
Full stop. I'm done with that, y'all. Because I told you, I don't just vote for people because of their color. I am not going to do that. I expect you as a Black person to come in with another kind of compassion because of what I expect that from Jews. I expect that from people of color. I expect that from anyone who's lived under the boot of oppression. But if you don't do that,
Yes,
you lose my support. I'm done with you. Love you,
Sure.
Pastor Stephen Thurston. You know, we've got Dr.
Well,
Shanina Knighton with us, but you know what? I want you to hear this. Stay, because I need you to hear this, because Pastor Thurston is little OCD. Dr. Shanina Knighton, he is really persnickety, very, very careful. And you've been telling us that we really need to wash our hands. And as we're watching the COVID news about the pandemic causing rapid brain aging in our children, the CDC is encouraging people to wear masks. I said, no. Let me not bring that up today. I saw wash your hands. That's from studyfinds.org. Self-service checkout screens and keyboards are crawling with fecal bacteria. Deal with that. Hello?
Yes, no. I
I
can only
just
smile
said,
because like this is in my it's in my wheelhouse of my work, and so it's been a thing. I think the problem is like we just don't pay attention and think about the fact what is happening with others.
unbelievable. How does fecal bacteria stay on your hands?
A couple of things. So for one, I'm be honest. So people with pets. Okay, so we could talk about the human piece for that of just not cleaning your hands correctly after using the restroom, which is a real thing. And I think I mentioned that before. Only 3 to 6% of people clean their hands correctly. People typically miss scrubbing up under the fingernails. If you have longer fingernails, they miss scrubbing that. So that stuff is going to live up under those surfaces as well as on jewelry, right? And so people don't clean properly on their hands. But the other aspect of that is even in addition to them not cleaning their hands correctly after restroom use, which is scary because we got people dealing with food, right? So even after that happens, you still have individuals that have pets. You got to remember, everybody not wiping their pet, behind. And think about how many people had a pet sit up on their furniture or in their bed.
And want them to sit up on you.
Exactly.
Oh.
No, but that's the truth. And so think about that whole process within itself. And hands are the number one thing that's going to rub, like, let's say, your dog. You're going to touch your dog's face. You're going to do all of that stuff. And so I'm not blaming it on pets, but I'm saying there's many different ways for which that can happen. So it does not surprise me whatsoever. The other piece of it is those screens are not clean. I bring that up all the time because even to around travel, Santita, I don't know if you remember, but last year I was just drawing a correlation between the fact that somebody goes to TSA, they don't have, like, let's say, their ticket on their phone, right? They don't have their ticket on their phone, but they might go through the TSA line. Unless they hand them, they got to go to the kiosk screen where everybody's fingers can touch it. And now they got to go through the checkout line. Now they just pass their ID off. It's like just how you mentioned that kiosk screen or like touch screens having all of those germs on there. Imagine how many times like you are touching somebody else's germs by also having to interact with those very same screens. Oh. And those screens are common. They can be clean. They do not make them to be cleaner solution friendly. So 9 times out of 10, they don't get wiped down. And so I tell people to look for a bottle of hand sanitizer around the screens when you're there. And if you don't see one, make sure that you have one on yourself to make sure that you clean your hands because it is a real thing. And what aggravates me is a lot of these places say that they have contactless payment, but then I got to pick up that little nasty pen to sign for it. So I'm already aggravated because it's like I done brought my touch. I done brought my Apple Pay or my other form of payment, so I don't even have to touch the screen, but I still got to touch the screen. And they're like, oh, you got to sign a receipt. I'm like, this is the most contactless payment method that I've ever seen in my life. And so we have to think about what it is we're touching.
Hey, Dr. Nina, everybody, at HEYDRNINA. Think about it. She makes you think. Love her. Let's talk about South Carolina. Should it be first in the nation for the Democratic primary? South Carolina is a little bit more than the Black primary. There's a whole lot going on there. Wash your hands, everybody. Fecal matter is everywhere. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh,
Well, thank you.
oh my gosh. I saw that and I thought about you. I said, oh my God. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think he asked last year when we were talking to the Reverend from Make It Plain.
Yeah. It's just, pardon me. Gotta pull this out for my upcoming segment. You know me, I'm always preparing for another segment or think about something that I need to. And my hair is acting crazy today. Crazier than normal. I mean, boy, it was so much easier when I just wore it pulled back. But there it is. There you have it. So much easier when I did that. But, this is just life. I decided to make a change, so you got to pay. There we go. If you could just stay there, hair. If you could just stay there. If you could just stay there. That would be great.
Stay there.
Just stay there. I think I need some hairspray. Just if you would just stay. Yeah, I do. And actually, y'all, I do have some hairspray. But but I saw that and I wanted to make people aware of where we are with, there are so many ways not to be hygienic. And there's so many places. This I just said, oh gosh. But my grandmother who worked in who worked in food services, she just thought everything was just unclean. She was right. But we were like, we just can't live like that with you here. Okay. Okay, y'all. I'm getting it together this morning. Okay. Oh, Shanina, if you know anyone down in Georgia, make sure they get out and vote today. They need to do that. They need to do that. They need to do that. So everybody, call me at 773-763-9278. Let me know what you are thinking about this race. They say Republicans really do get out and vote. And on election day, indeed, they've been discouraged from mailing in their votes, which is something that they used to encourage people to do. And they're telling people to get out and vote on election day. And even though it's raining in Georgia, thank you, Brooke Benton, rainy night in Georgia, these folks are still going to get out and vote. Be clear on that. But in the meantime, you have got the suggestion that that South Carolina will become the first in the nation, even though New Hampshire said, "Look, we're still going to be first in the nation. That's part of our law, but it's not national law." You can't make this stuff up. So I can't wait to see how this is all going to play out. And let's keep it real. People are making a big deal about this because South Carolina is considered to be the black primary. Started being that when Reverend Jackson won it in 1984, and then when he won it in a landslide in 1988. Colorize everything. But the fact is, there's more to South Carolina than, the black-white dynamic. So, Juno?
Miss Jackson, we have about 25 seconds till live.
Okay.
All guests are on.
Okay, we have Mr. Borosage, whose name you got perfectly.
I tried, thanks. Mr. Borosage, we have David Daly and we have Miss Wells.
Absolutely. Should I say Attorney Borosage? Bob Borosage, how are you?
I'm good. Good morning. I hope everyone's voting in Georgia.
Oh, well, you can say that as soon as we get up on there. That's what we are.
Stand by.
Hoping. We're coming up. Okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Tuesday, December 6, 2022. All eyes are on Georgia. People are voting in Georgia today. Who is going to emerge victorious? Will it be Senator Raphael Warnock or will it be Citizen Herschel Walker? We all want to know. We have seen records broken. There has been an incredible interest in this election, and more than almost 2 million people, 1.85 million people as of Saturday, had voted in this election. But Republicans are now encouraging people to vote on election day. So we're going to have to see what's going to happen. We're going to have to see what's going to happen. President Trump did a viral shout out, if you will, a viral not just endorsement because he is his hand-picked candidate, but he did a viral rally for Herschel Walker, but he stayed out of the state, as did President Biden, but not President Obama, who's extremely popular, probably the most popular figure in the Democratic Party today. And so we're going to see how all of this adds up. Everybody I know is in Georgia today, except these persons. But we're going to have Greg Palast on at the top of the hour because he is seeing something that is troubling him about Raphael Warnock. And it's just encouraging you to get out and vote. And everybody call somebody you know and get them to vote today and get them to get some people out there to vote today. Before we bring on our guest, let me speak to Shapiro Wells. I got to get my order in for Christmas celebrations by us. How you doing, Shapiro Wells?
I'm great, Santita. We are up working already. We have some corporate orders to do. So give us a call at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We can handle all of your holiday needs. We can handle your turkey, your ham, your mac and cheese, your mastacholi, your Cajun pasta, your dressing, as well as also your candy potatoes, as well as also our sweets. We have our peach cobbler, our banana pudding, our caramel cake, our red velvet cake. So don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you, and thank you so much, Santita.
Sending you much love. Hey, everybody, as we're looking at what's happening in Georgia, and I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. I want to talk about election 2024 because indeed that's where we are now. The presidential election, these federal elections, these governorships, all the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, they will be running once more. I mean, and local elections, we are moving into our Chicago mayoral election in just a few months. It just doesn't stop. And so please get registered and vote, everybody, and find out if you have been in the system, if you've been incarcerated, find out if you can vote. And today, call vote.org, go to vote.org, and find out if you have been purged rolls. Whatever you do, get to the polls and work it out there. And once you're at the polls, call 1-866-OUR-VOTE, 1-866-OUR-VOTE, and have the lawyers walk you through the process of casting your vote. We have someone I have admired and just someone who I adore. I've known him for a long, long time. Indeed, he and Reverend Jackson have been joined at the hip for more than 40 years. And he's one of the icons in the progressive movement, brilliant attorney, writer. He's been with Katrina Vanden Heuvel at the Nation magazine. He's been with the Institute for Policy Studies. But and as the president of the Institute for America's Future, he co-founded the Campaign for America's Future and continues to work with the Rainbow Push Coalition. Robert Borsage, attorney Robert Borsage, absolutely brilliant, and so glad that you are with us today, joined by New York Times bestselling author and Fair Vote Senior Fellow, David Daley. Going to talk about South Carolina. South Carolina has, as you know better than anyone, because of course you were in the Jackson campaigns. You were Reverend's, policy or issues director. In 1988, I just saw you all together every day. And so, but in South Carolina, shockingly, I remember the Secret Service toddling to the back of the bus, bringing, because in 1984, what was high tech was a television that did not need to be plugged into the wall. And he showed Reverend, and he was in shock, as were we, kind of, sort of, that Reverend was winning Mississippi. And then Reverend really run much of the South in 1984 and then absolutely took it in 1988. Many people then said, okay, South Carolina is a black primary. But there's much more to South Carolina. You've got, and I've spent a lot of time there, Bob Borisage, because growing up, we would spend half of our summers with our parents' parents. And so I spent half the summer in South Carolina. The Greenville that I knew is not the Greenville that I know today. You have all of these international manufacturers of automobiles who are there. So you have the automobile industry. You've got big educational institutions there. You've got tourism in the Low Country. You have got a lot in South Carolina. You've got agriculture. There's just so much there. But there's pushback. New Hampshire is saying, look, it is codified in our laws that we are going to be the first in the nation. And Iowa said, don't forget about me. You need the agriculturalist, and I don't know what you're talking about. But Biden is saying, look, blacks are the backbone of the party. They delivered this victory to me. And we need to have a more diverse showing, because the first in the nation helps to shape the race in such a big way. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, there's no question that South Carolina is being rewarded for essentially saving the Biden candidacy in 2020. He lost in Iowa, and in fact, Iowa was such a mess that he didn't produce results. Lost in New Hampshire, and really looked like he was going to be out of it, and then won big in South Carolina, and it turned his campaign around. So in many ways, this elevation of the South Carolina primary from third in the nation to first is a reward for that from Biden. And of course, with him committed thus far to running again in 2024, putting South Carolina first certainly would give him a leg up on anybody else, although I don't think anybody's going to challenge him if he actually decides to run.
But what about changing this calendar? What will that signal? Do you think that this is called for? Because not only would South Carolina be moved up, they're looking at Michigan, they're looking at Nevada. They're looking at really having a more diverse slate moved into place, right, as opposed to the traditional. Well, no, but this has not been, I guess, chiseled in stone. Iowa was not always first. New Hampshire was not always first. So,
well, Iowa traditionally has been the first state and a caucus state, followed by New Hampshire, and then they moved South Carolina and Nevada up to make sure that early on there was a greater sense of the diversity of the Democratic Party, since Iowa and New Hampshire are almost lily white states. No one really has much of a case for Iowa. It's a caucus state. It's been a mess. The for days. And so I think it's pretty hard for Iowa to defend its position anymore, and that's a done deal. The New Hampshire primary, as you said, under New Hampshire law, they are intent on being the first primary in the country. And the Biden proposal would make South Carolina the first in the country. The advantage of South Carolina, obviously, is that it's a diverse state. The majority of the voters in the Democratic primary are African American, and so it makes the African American voice very strong in the first primary, if it is the first primary in the country. The disadvantage of it is that it's a state that votes 55-40 Republican in every presidential election. So it's not a swing state. It's not one where Democrats are competitive in the general election. And the constituency, the African American constituency, is older, rural, small city, and it tends to be much more conservative than much of the African American community and urban communities around the country. So there's an argument that says, it's a black vote, but it's not exactly a representative black vote of the new young generation that's rising around the country.
But there's also the argument that, okay, John McCain I mean, he was a locomotive when he was running. And then he hit a wall called George W. Bush, right? And South Carolina can build you and it can break you. I mean, in this case, it not. I mean, it didn't just it just rebooted the Biden campaign because right up to that point, people were asking him to get out the campaign. Let's not forget that. And the black vote did save him. But I think this is about much more than the black vote. I mean, because it's an agricultural state, it's a manufacturing state, educational state. They have the defense industry. They've got a lot there. They even have tourism, down in Charleston in the Low Country, going toward Georgia. Is it time to move the calendar around, Bob Borisage?
I don't have any problem with moving the calendar around, and certainly displacing Iowa makes a lot of sense. I do think if you were going to choose a state which was diverse and had a large African American population, I would elevate Georgia. Georgia is a swing state. Democrats have been winning it, by a bare margin. Today, there's a runoff in it that's incredibly important. And if you live in Georgia or you know someone who lives in Georgia, you should be calling them back if they vote today. And Georgia makes sense because it is such a contested state. It would be, and it's more urban than South Carolina, and it would be a real good indicator of an early primary. But obviously, Georgia was not the state that saved Biden 4 years ago, and so South Carolina is getting the reward.
Well, I mean, but does that make sense? I mean, it's just a state away. I mean, this can't just be about South Carolina and Biden and what happened in 2020. Do you think that they would just make that? Do you think this is just a political reward? I mean, that's it?
I think this is a real reward to James Clyburn, who saved the Biden campaign. I think there's no question about that.
David Daley, New York Times bestselling author of Rat Effed, the true story of the secret plan to steal our democracy and unrigged, how Americans are battling back to save our democracy. Of course, senior fellow at Fair Vote. What do you make of this? I mean, not just South Carolina, but my goodness, Nevada, Michigan. I mean, this whole calendar could be reordered. What do you make of it? Is it a good idea? What would be the impact?
Calendar. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I think this discussion has been right on. Joe Biden left New Hampshire and Iowa effectively left for dead in 2020. He was middle of the pack in New Hampshire, and indeed there were a lot of people saying that his time had come and gone. He was rescued by South Carolina, rescued by Jim Clyburn. This is certainly a reward for that. When you think about how fractured the Democratic Party was heading into South Carolina in 2020, talk of contested, divided convention, Sanders and Buttigieg really at the front after Iowa and New Hampshire. And the race left South Carolina a completely different race. And not long after that, the country was in lockdown and the race was frozen. And after Super Tuesday, it was over. And so I agree that the president is unlikely to face a primary challenge in 2024. He says that he is running again. We'll see about that. But this would radically remake the kind of presidential field in 8. It would certainly elevate the voices of Black voters in South Carolina, of Latino voters in Nevada, the diverse state that Michigan has really become. And it would elevate those voices who really are the soul and the base of the party above the white voters in New Hampshire and Iowa who have had the job of sort of culling and sorting the early field now for decades. And it's time to pass that responsibility along. They will still be at the beginning, but they will not sort of have a monopoly on winnowing down the field in a Democratic Party that has changed very much. And I think those states like to hold on to that power and claim that they are small enough states that it's still a retail experience. I think you all know that South Carolina can still very much be a retail experience, and it is not necessarily such a large state that it simply turns this into a media and TV contest.
Everybody, what do you think? Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Should this calendar be changed? I mean, Bob Borsage, you, of course, having been this great progressive and having come out of the Jackson campaigns, I mean, there was a lot that we saw in the Jackson campaign, as you well know better than anyone. I think of Frank Watkins today, God rest his soul. How they created Super Tuesday, really, in the hope, or should I say in the hopes, multiple hopes, that Reverend Jackson's candidacy would be ended on Super Tuesday, would be ended in the South, and actually he became the front runner coming out of the South.
It's one of the great ironies of that period. The right wing, the corporate wing of the party, the Democratic, what Reverend Jackson called the Democrats for the leisure class.
And you did too.
aligning all the southern states because they thought they would all line up and vote for a more conservative white candidate, Sam Nunn or Bill Clinton or one of the DLC leaders. And the problem was they didn't know how to count. So when Reverend Jackson turned out, registered 7 million people in 84, and then turned out the African-American vote 84 and 88, Super Tuesday became a boost not for the right wing of the party, but for progressives across the country. And it's one of the great ironies of history in some ways.
And we're seeing it come to fruition today. I mean, the party that was constructed in 84 and 88, we're seeing it bear fruit today. I mean, where do you want to see the party go? I mean, because we certainly, when you do have these first primaries, Bob Borsage, they do shape, so you come out of New Hampshire and Iowa the front runner. It did help to shape the Obama candidacy, for example. But he did need to win in South Carolina. Otherwise, he would have lost credibility because he couldn't win without the black vote. We over-indexed in our vote in order to put him into the White House. So where should we go from here? I mean, should they move over a state? I mean, is South Carolina not representative enough? Should this come down to a political chit?
Well, I certainly agree that, dislodge, not starting with two lily whites, Iowa and New Hampshire, is very unrepresentative of the party and of the country. And so moving certainly Iowa out of there makes all the sense in the world. I would pump to put Georgia up, not South Carolina, for the reasons I said earlier. This country is in desperate need for a progressive set of policies that deal with the looming problems that we face that now has an economy that doesn't work for most people and is really causing great damage across the country. And so what I'm interested in is a primary system that opens the door for insurgent candidates and doesn't just lay the groundwork for establishment candidates with establishment contacts to make their way without much challenge. The advantage of Iowa and New Hampshire was that they were small enough and they had a culture of listening to candidates that Reverend Jackson could exceed expectations there, or Bernie Sanders could get propelled out of there and begin a debate in the country that it needed to hear. So I'm very concerned that as we make these changes, we we keep the possibility of doing that. For Obama, he had to prove that he could speak to people in Iowa and white people in Iowa and New Hampshire. And when he did that and shocked people, that, gave him a boost to his candidacy. So, as I said, I think moving Iowa down because the caucus system hasn't worked in different ways is very much viable. And moving a diverse state to be first, I think, is incredibly important. Again, I'd prefer Georgia just because I think it'd be more open to insurgent candidates than more conservative voters in South Carolina's Democratic primaries.
David Daly, I'm going to give you the final word here. Got about a minute and a half.
I think we should also keep in mind that while the DNC says that they want to do this, they need the help and the approval of state legislatures in many of these places. At least in South Carolina, it is the state legislature that's going to effectively run these primaries, and Republicans run the state of South Carolina, and the Republican Party has shown zero interest so far in changing Iowa and New Hampshire and kicking them out. They have in fact said that their primaries in 2024 will, as usual, begin in Iowa and New Hampshire. So will some of these states go along with the additional expense of running a Democratic primary and then a Republican primary? How is this going to work? I think there's still a lot left up in the air that we will have to see in the months ahead.
It could be a political sleight of hand, Bob Borsage, because at least the president can say, well, I did try. Goodness gracious. Look, I don't, I'm not a cynic, but I just wonder, I'm always looking at political calculation, Bob Borsage. I got one more minute. Just, because he can say, I tried, but, the Republicans wouldn't let me.
Right. No question that President Biden wanted to make it clear that he was giving Jim Clyburn a reward and giving the voters of South Carolina a reward for what they did 4 years ago. And whether this goes through or not, he's made it clear that he's repaying his political debt.
Well, I'm still upset about Bernie from 2020, so still salty. Bob Borsage, I'm telling you, just got to be honest about it. But we'll see. I want to know what your thoughts are, everybody. Call me. Should this calendar be changed? Should it be Georgia, not South Carolina? I don't know. What do you think about the Warnock-Walker race? What do you think? What do you expect tonight? Very quickly, Bob Borsage, what are you thinking is going to happen tonight?
Well, I'm hoping that Georgians are sensible and they re-elect a really fine senator and do not pick somebody who is clearly unfit to be in office.
Dave Daly?
Judges. It's all about judges. This race is about the U.S. Supreme Court in so many ways. Democrats are going to hold the Senate after tonight, no matter what. The difference between a 51-49 Senate and a 50-50 Senate is the ability to fill the federal bench after Republicans have spent years stacking it with young conservatives. It's the difference between potentially, if there's an opening on the U.S. Supreme Court in the next 2 years, while there's a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate, it is the ability to get judges on the bench. And as we have seen in the Dobbs case and so many others, that's where so much of the future of this country's policy is going to be decided.
Vote, 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 everybody. Get everybody to vote in Georgia. Let's talk about the vote in Georgia. And let's talk about South Carolina and this changing political landscape. Oh, boy, this is exciting stuff. I'm Santita Jackson. Stay right here. Back in just a few minutes. Bob Borsage, will you come back to my show?
Sure. Call me on another day, and I'm happy to.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy you joined me. I've got to tell Dad that you were here today. He's going to be so excited. Why didn't you have me?
Give him a hug if you see him.
Oh, I absolutely. I will see him later on today, and I will do that. He's on his way to Washington. The Union is going to honor him on Friday.
Oh, wonderful.
You know, so that's a thrill. That's a thrill. So thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it. Thank
My
you for
pleasure.
making the time.
Take care.
God bless you. And happy holidays. Yay.
And the same to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Oh, God bless. Dave Daly, thank you so much.
Great fun. Thank you.
Dave, do you have to leave right now?
I do. I have to get out to Tacoma.
Well, do
I'm
me
in
a
DC.
favor.
I've got a 9 o'clock. Got to get out to in Tacoma Park, so I've got to hop on the metro.
Well, just very, very quickly, could you make your point about what's at stake with the judiciary to the Facebook Live audience once more?
I'm sure.
If you can do that now, that would be great, because I'm not going to.
Yes, absolutely. Democrats are going to control the Senate after tonight's election, no matter what. It will either be, as it is now, a 50-50 tie with the vice president breaking the tie in favor of the Democrats, or it'll be 51-49. And a fine senator like Raphael Warnock will get a full term in office. Republicans control the House, so it's going to be a very different Washington. Probably very little will get done. It's difficult to imagine Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate agreeing on much and sending it up to the White House for signing. But what will happen, and what the Senate's main task really is going to be over the next 2 years, will be confirming federal judges. There are more than 75 openings on the federal bench right now. There are, an additional several dozen openings on the federal appeals courts. And Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, were very, very effective during their years in filling spots that came open with young Federalist Society conservatives, moving them through the pipeline. And they have dramatically changed the nation's policy as a result. Whether on reproductive rights in the Dobbs case, the pause on student debt that is happening right now. So the importance of these judges is crucial. And obstruct it. If Democrats have got a clear majority, they will be able to move folks through and fill those spots. And it's a generation or more of the judiciary on the line. And then if by some chance there's an opening on the U.S. Supreme Court, you would have a 49 Senate. And instead of a 50-50 Senate in which Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema has got veto power over who that justice is, in a 51-49 Senate, there's a little more wiggle room. It would not completely surprise me with a Democratic president and Senate if there's that Justice Sotomayor, Justice Kagan, who are both in their 60s, would they learn the lesson of Justice Ginsburg, who held on too long and was not replaced by a Democratic president as she wanted? Would they retire and make room for another generation, quite possibly?
Oh, David? Oh. David, let me know if you can join us again tomorrow or the next day to go over
He's
that.
still there.
Oh, okay.
There he is.
Lord B. Harper, I'll be at the court tomorrow, but we can talk about Thursday.
Okay, that would be great.
On Thursday.
Yeah, because I want you to come back and really break that down. I just don't think, these big issues, and they are digestible. I've seen Reverend do it. They're not being broken down for people. They're not being put out there. And I'm like, what are you doing? And mind you, even with heartbreak, Reverend went out. That's how he was able to, the rainbow turned the Senate back over to the Democrats in 1986 at the height of Reaganism.
Amen.
It can be done, everybody.
It can be done, and it's going to be tough in 2024. The Senate in 2024 is going to run through Montana and West Virginia, and the question of whether Democrats can hold on to those seats is going to be the map gets really, really difficult, which is another reason why a 51-49 edge and having that seat in Georgia is going to be so important, looking at the Senate map in its entirety.
Well, I really want you back so we can talk about
I'm
that.
happy to do it. Let's look at Thursday.
Okay, you let me know. I mean, because if Thursday is when you can do it, you got it.
Yeah, it should be. I'm still on the road on Thursday. So.
Unless someone else gets you. I know I have to share you with the world. I'm sitting up here listening to NPR and I bump into you and I'm like, what?
You're funny. You're funny. All right. Thanks, everybody. I got to run.
All right. Blessings to you. Bye-bye.
Miss Jackson, we have about 40 seconds here, 35 maybe. We have Kevin Gray and Greg Palast on.
Great. And you know what? You can call Rodney Ellis at the bottom of the hour. Hey, Kevin Gray.
Got it.
Morning. Good morning.
No, good morning. Greg Palast. I have Kevin Gray. Do you know Kevin?
I don't
stand by, please.
Sure. I'm going to introduce you to him. He's brilliant and one of the architects of Reverend's South Carolina Sweeps.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Hey, it is Election Day, Tuesday, December 6, 2022. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Used to be Air America, but now we're WCPT, the Heartland Signal, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and I'm Daryl Jones from the Transformative Justice Coalition, who's been touring the South, said, throughout the South, people have been coming to him saying, I listened to you on the Santita Jackson Show. So for all the people who are listening to us far and wide, Carol out there in Beverly Hills and Linear Bob up there in Canada and Daryl and all of our people, Shirley from Philadelphia, our people in Georgia, our people in the rest of Pennsylvania and from all over. I want to thank you so much for your support and just please continue to keep us in your prayers and let people know about the show. Everybody who is watching us today, we've had a little trouble trying to stay up, but we're still here. Want you to go to, please like and share. Everybody like and share. And please call us and let us know what you think. What's going to happen today down in Georgia? Call us at 773-7278. But we'll also bring out what's happening in this reset that is being proposed in the primary structure. Will New Hampshire and Iowa be the first? David Daley, New York Times bestselling author, senior fellow at FairVote, said, President Biden can make this recommendation. Okay, Bob Borisage, it is a political chit. That having been said, the state legislatures are the ones who make the call. And most of the state legislatures in the United States today, because of Republican plans, are Republican. Think about that. So, President Biden can say, well, I tried. Okay, so we're going to see how all of this is going to work. But what do you think? I mean, there has been this big hullabaloo about South Carolina. It's the black primary, but there's so much more to South Carolina than the racial dynamic. It's a manufacturing state. It's an educational state. It's a tourism state. There is so much that is there. So we're going to be talking about that along with the discussion about this race today. Call me at 773-763-9278. So let's get to some of these headlines. In Chicago, we'll have a high of 44 degrees today. It will be rainy. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, 27 degrees, mostly sunny. In the NFL, what about Tom Brady? He's extraordinary. In the last, 3 minutes of the game, he made up the deficit and took the Buccaneers over the top, 17-16, allowing them to stay tops in their division. In the NBA, both Chicago and Minnesota's teams got a bit of a break. In the NHL, Chicago will be playing the Devils. They need to both change their names of these teams. The Blackhawks, I don't even call their name except for now. And the Devils, come on, you guys. Dedicating the show to one of my favorite actresses, Kirstie Alley, who made her transition. Shocking. Just 71 years of age, so full of life, Emmy Award-winning actress, Golden Globe-winning actress, iconic on Cheers. She made her transition. No one knew that she had this private battle with cancer, sending love to her 2 children and thanking God for this great, great woman who gave us so much joy down through the years. It is the day that we've been waiting for. Herschel Walker, Senator Raphael Warnock. Who you got, everybody? Call me at 773-763-9278. They're expected to be a tight race. Democrats voted early. Republicans are supposed to be voting today. We're going to see what's going to happen, everybody. Mauna Loa, the volcano in Hawaii, will it reach a critical highway? That is the question today as it explodes. Conservative members of the Supreme Court appeared to side with a graphic designer who doesn't want to work with same-sex couples on their wedding websites. Indeed, Justice Alito even made a joke about a black Santa. Can't make this stuff up. 10 countries with the best paid vacation. Did you know the United States is number 2? And guess what? The United States is the only so-called developing nation that does not have statutory paid leave. And 10,000 people have signed an open letter demanding that President Biden order paid sick leave for rail workers who still do not have it. And as we look at this supply chain challenge, this crisis that we're facing, you couldn't get baby formula, all kinds of food, all kinds of things that you need to live from day to day. Well, guess what? According to a report, the U.S.-based group Win Without War said that our economy prioritizes profits over people. And their evidence is that the only industry that was not disrupted by the supply chain problem is, drum roll please, the gun industry. Global arms sales were up and they got delivered. You can't make this stuff up. And those are the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody, I want you to reach out to Team Hochberg if you need financial freedom, if you need to get a credit card, if you need to bring down your credit card debt, if you need to buy a house, if you want to buy a house or an apartment building. You can do it, but you need a plan and you need advocates. Team Hochberg, that's what they do. And I want you to reach out to them at 855-56-DAVID or go to 56david.com and get a free consultation. Let them know what you're dealing with. If you've got credit card debt like Tom and Sonia, they had 17 credit cards, $100,000 of balances on those credit cards. They were barely holding on to their home. Well, guess what? They reached out to Team Hochberg. They got a free consultation. Team Hochberg then went to bat for them with the credit card companies and brought down their credit card payments by over $2,800, saving them massive amounts of money. And not only did they save them their credit cards, they saved their home. That could be you, everybody. So many people are struggling. They helped them to get an FHA loan. They helped them to hold on to their homes. That could be you. In fact, it is you. So call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit them at 56david.com so that you can get what it is that you need. But Kevin Gray, we got a lot going on in the South today. Of course, he's the former president of the ACLU of South Carolina. And of course, we have got a brilliant investigative reporter, Greg Palestine, with us again today. We're talking about South Carolina. We're also talking about Georgia. Everybody has Georgia on their mind, but I want to find out from you. First, we were talking with Bob Borsaj, who you know, Reverend Jackson's issues director from the 1988 campaign, and of course, one of the icons in the progressive space, and David Daley, New York Times bestselling author, Rat Effed and Unrigged, and he's a senior fellow at Fair Vote. Bob Borsaj said, moving the calendar around, but South Carolina should not be it necessarily. Maybe Georgia. That's more representative of the nation, and it's a more winnable state for Democrats. What say you?
Well, Democrats, they like to spend a lot of money. That apparently, if they're talking about Georgia, and if you're looking at the amount of money that was spent just in the senatorial race in Georgia, both with the general and with the runoff, I was looking at the numbers. I'm like, wow, you could do a whole lot of money with a whole lot of things with all the money they spend in Georgia. But looking at South Carolina as a first state, like a lot of observers have said, it's not an expensive state to buy ads in. It's not an expensive state to organize in. It's small. You can do retail politics here easier. Fundamentally or ideologically, South Carolina is the state that first seceded from the Union. It's the ideological home of white supremacy. So you can make a lot of points about race and where our country has been and where it's going. If it's a primary where Biden has a competition, that will make it interesting. If it's just Biden, then pretty much he wants the Clyburn black vote rubber stamp, and I don't know how cool I would be with that, but I think that South Carolina is a good place to start campaigning versus an Iowa, which is predominantly white. South Carolina is 1/3 black. If we look at the population of the country as a whole, and the black population, then it's obvious that campaigning in South Carolina, you have a more diverse population to draw from. And then if you're talking about changing the nature of politics in this country, you have to start in the South. You have to have a strategy beyond the presidential elections. You have to have a plan to take over state legislatures and have an impact on state legislatures and changing the nature of politics. So, just from a looking at it for me, like it was a laboratory for what we might be able to accomplish in the future. I think South Carolina is a good place to start.
So what do you think is going to, we've watched oh boy. You explain what happened in 84 and 88 in South Carolina. And because you came out of the 84 campaign in South Carolina, which it was shocking how well he did, that he won. And that he won Mississippi. It was just, people were just shocked. Even those of us inside of the campaign were. What you came out of South Carolina saying what? You saw that we could win and win big in 88.
And it took 4 years of organizing. That's the thing. In 88, South Carolina was a caucus state. And of course, they went to a primary after 88 because of Reverend. And because of the organizing that we did, they didn't think that we were smart enough to organize enough people to turn out for a caucus on a particular day at a particular time. But it took 4 years of organizing and identifying people by name, by neighborhood, by city. Really hardcore leather, shoe leather campaigning and door knocking. And knowing who was going to be at those meetings. We knew we had to have 25 to 35,000 people in those meetings on that Saturday. And that took a lot of doing. I favor the primary because it gets more people involved. But a caucus, especially back in 84, at least we identified and knew the political actors in each community. And that was valuable, and that remains valuable. After the primary, some of those voices that we organized in 88 and 84 kind of became nullified because of the primary, and then the money came in. When we did it in 84 and 88, as Reverend used to say, I remember Reverend telling me in the car, I appreciate you operating under these no money conditions, which is so, but it takes organizing for a caucus. Primaries, it takes money, but I steadfastly believe that we have to go back to some way of reconnecting with communities in different ways and doing the grassroots organizing. And I don't believe in just organizing between political campaign cycles, that you have to do it constantly. But back there again, I think South Carolina, because it's a small state. We got 4 million people. Because you can travel around the state, you can go anywhere in the state from Columbia within 2 hours. Columbia's at the center of the state, and it gives people a chance to raise issues, of poor and marginalized people, to raise issues of the Black community in a coherent way, I think.
We're talking with Kevin Gray, former president of the ACLU of South Carolina. Indeed, he was the manager of the Jackson campaigns in 84 and 88, and organized, and made a lot of history. And he understands politics and really understands what's happening in the South. Before we pivot over to you, Greg Palast, who you see Warnock in trouble because his vital mail-in vote, you said, was virtually eliminated. That is shocking. What are you seeing? What are you hearing out of Georgia, Kevin Gray? Kevin?
What am I hearing out of Georgia?
Mm-hmm. And what are you expecting tonight?
I expect Warnock to pull it off. I really do. I think that I don't think that he's going to get the white vote that he thinks he's going to get. I think people are embarrassed by him. The comment that Dave Chappelle made on Saturday Night Live, I think it holds water. That Herschel is observably stupid, and with all the questions about his residency, about his relationship with his children, with his with women in the past, I think that's going to hurt him, and I think that Black voters are going to come out because he's an embarrassment to Black people, and I think that that's a motivator. So I'm thinking that there's going to be a Warnock victory, and all we can do is cross our fingers and wait for the count to come in this evening.
Well, we'll have to see, because I got some very disturbing data from of the producer and the director and the writer of the movie. Well, not the director, but he conceived of this movie, Vigilante. Everybody go to vigilantemovie.com. You can see it. Thank you, Jamie Foxx, for enabling people to see it without cost through today. You said Warnock is in trouble. His mail-in vote was virtually eliminated. We are not hearing that. What do you mean? Mail-in ballots fell by 83%? Are you serious?
Oh, yes. Oh, by the way, the good news is, this is Greg Palast, and yeah, you get all the data at gregpalast.com. But if you go to vigilantemovie.com, the good news is it was specifically because of your request I was able to get the producers to agree to the executive producers. We have Martin Sheen, we have George DiCaprio, the DiCaprio family. They have been able, who are the executive producers of the film. So Hollywood has said, yes, you may keep the film up for free through this weekend. So we got all week to watch it. Don't wait too long, because then it's gone. Can't even buy it, or you can't purchase a stream or watch it on Netflix. Not yet, anyway. So go to vigilantemovie.com, and there will be, you can get it for no charge. Vigilantemovie.com. But yes, what's happening is Jim Crow is really on the ballot here. You had 2 years ago when Reverend Warnock won the Senate seat with John Ossoff, and Biden won the presidential race. But in that runoff race, Reverend Warnock won 734,000 Georgia votes. He slammed the mail-in vote in the runoff by 2.5 to 1. It was a crush. He picked up almost 500,000 vote plurality in that early voting, in the mail-in voting. So what the Republican Party did is they passed this law, SB 202, and the mail-in voting is now crushed down by over 90%. It's just a fraction. There have been only about 150,000 mail-in ballots received back, and only a couple 100,000 requested, because it's almost impossible to vote by mail. This was done deliberately because they know that that's Reverend Warnock, Senator Warnock's base. So they simply said, okay, if he wins through the mail-in vote, and he only won that election, that runoff election, by less than 100,000 votes, out of 4 million votes. And so they said, well, let's take away his mail-in vote. They crushed.
Wait,
Yeah.
Kevin,
Mhm.
what did you say, Kevin?
Let me
Yeah,
ask
Kevin.
Greg a question, because this morning I was watching the projections, and they were saying that the early voting was up on the Warnock side from 22% to 36%. So will that equalize the assault on the mail-in votings?
Definitely people are making it up. So what's happening is you can't mail in your ballot because they crushed the time from 60 days to 28 days. Not really enough time for the counties to print, to send out, receive back the mail-in ballots. So what happened is that people got into those lines to vote. And that's the good news. When you see, if you go to gregpalace.com, you'll see this photo, this little video of me going along the line. It goes on and on and on. So we could get it in on camera. We had to do kind of a cartoon speed up. Those lines were 2 to 3 hours long in every single Atlanta early voting station. So it's amazing. So so people said, I know I can't mail in my ballot. The voting rights groups were saying, don't mail in your ballot if you can come in. Obviously absentee voters from out of state are still short. So yes, it's not even a matter whether Warnock can make it up. The way I look at it, can democracy make it up? When you take away people's opportunity to vote, including mail-in voters like my daughter, this student in Savannah, who is now home for Christmas vacation, and so these schools are closed, so a lot of the students are missing. So hopefully, people will be able to come in and in person today. Unfortunately, at this moment, it's raining. So, again, will democracy prevail here? It's not even the candidate. If democracy prevails, Warnock's walking back to Washington. It's not even a question. When you look at the poll, he's way ahead. The question is, will they allow voters of color to vote? That's always the issue in Georgia.
Well, and that has always been the point. The fact is, America, we make America, Black people in our struggle has made America move toward democracy. It is Black people in this struggle and our movement that has moved us away from this right-wing inclination that the country, out of which it was born. So the question is, will it prevail? Will it appear? Because we act as if we've had democracy, and we haven't. We've been trying to move toward it, and we keep getting pushed back, and we keep pushing back. We keep pushing forward. But Greg Palace, you know better than anyone that America has the democracy is something that it's an ambition. It has not been a reality, and we have to continue to push to make that a reality. Stay with me, everybody. John Nichols is going to join us. What do you think about what's going to happen in Georgia? What do you think about that, everybody? What will happen? These mail-in ballots fell by 83%, but then we also broke records in terms of in-person voting. So we'll have to see, will the in-person voting mitigate that? And will people get out and vote today? It's going to be raining in Georgia. No, just get out and vote. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Greg Palace, how did you get these numbers? Kevin, I'm going to send this to you right now, Kevin, because I was really stunned when he sent this to me.
I was watching
from. Just let me mention, all of our data comes from the Secretary of State's office. They don't like to give it out, so we have to go. We don't hack the machines, but we hunt through the basic core data at the Secretary of State's site. And we've had to sue them before to get this data, but we got a court order, so we get the data. That's how we do it. You turn it over, or we sue you again in federal court. They literally had to pay our attorney, Gerald Griggs, now head of the NAACP. They don't want you to know this stuff. They want to say, oh, look at the record turnout. Oh, the mail-in vote went down by 83%? Yeah. So it's all Secretary of State's actual data.
And I was watching MSNBC and Steve Kornacki earlier this morning when he was talking about the early voting and the percentages of early voters being up. And the issue with the rain was whether or not Republican voters would come out in the rain. Or any voters, because most of the time when it rains, most people don't like to stand in lines. And of course, they mentioned, which I always like to tell people, when you leave Atlanta, you're in Georgia.
You're in Georgia.
They were talking about the outline. You're in Georgia. They were talking about counties like Forsyth. And all I can remember is marching in Forsyth after Hosea Williams went down there back in the 80s. But and that was the count, where there were no blacks in Forsyth.
None. You're in Georgia. It's like when you leave Chicago, you're in Illinois.
Yeah.
Let's get real.
But I want to talk about the rain when we get back on air. That's the issue.
You really think it's going to be an issue?
No, everything. Well, yes and no, because number one, the commitment of voters here is higher than in any state I've ever been in, and I've been covering elections in almost every state. There's nothing like it. People are committed, especially in Atlanta.
Well, maybe we need to thank Donald Trump for that, because I tell you what, giving us Herschel Walker has, I can tell you, black folks have been upset by this.
That might have been a blessing, though, in disguise. I talk to a lot of different types of people because of the restaurant. I tell people we get the hipsters to the Trumpsters in there, and then even some of the people in business.
Let me say Railroad Barbecue. This is the restaurant that he owns in Columbia, South Carolina, Greg Palace. When you go to South Carolina, you should go there. It's the top restaurant in the city, and it's also a civil rights museum. It's fabulous.
Well, if you said the word barbecue, I'm there.
Well, come on through. I've been talking to a lot of people that actually Republicans that have gone down to Georgia prior to the general and to hear Herschel and thinking they were going to support Herschel. Mm-hmm. So even with some of my conservative associates, I won't call them friends, they have been cooled to Herschel Walker because of all the scandals. And I had a friend tell me the other day, I had a guy who does my T-shirts, and he's conservative. He's kind of conservative libertarian. But he said, my wife said, if I went back or sent any money to Herschel Walker, then he needs to be finding a place to live.
Miss Jackson?
Yes, dear.
We have about 20 seconds here. We have John Nichols and Rodney Ellis.
Oh, wonderful. This is going to be fun.
And then when you talk about the race component of it, where you got an ex relationship who happens to be white.
Stand by.
Black man basically menaced her.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about Georgia today, everybody. Georgia is on our minds. What's going to happen down there? Will Raphael Warnock prevail? Will Herschel Walker be able to squeeze on through? We just got this information from Greg Palace, who's with us today. Of course, you can see Vigilante the movie. Go to vigilantemovie.com or go to gregpalace.com so that you can see it without charge. That's right. Jamie Foxx has made that possible. Everybody go see it today because you need to. But we're seeing that the mail-in ballots were virtually eliminated in this election, falling off by 83%. Absolutely stunning. We welcome, of course, to the show a segment that belongs to him, which is, of course, John Nichols. Every Tuesday he's with us at the bottom of the hour. And then we were able to corral Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, who's campaigning. Everybody's in Georgia. Everybody except me today. I'm so sad. But, Greg, very quickly, before I bring on John, I don't know if John knows this, but this is stunning information that you've been able to present to us about the mail-in ballots. What happened?
Well, okay, again, we get this from the Secretary of State's office. We had to go into court with the head of the NAACP, Gerald Griggs, and open up their files, but we haven't. We have an 83% drop in the mail-in balloting from 2 years ago, and now in the runoff, it looks like the drop-off is going to be 90% plus. And why? Because because of SB 202 passed by the voter vigilante in chief, signed by the vigilante in chief Brian Kemp, the Republican governor, who, by the way, there's an op-ed yesterday in the New York Times saying he ought to be president. The Wall Street Journal has already endorsed him for president of the United States. They attacked. This is funny. He attacked Stacey Abrams for saying she had presidential ambition. He's already begun his presidential campaign. But
well, she's not supposed to have presidential ambitions. You know that. Come on.
So the key is that several things. One, the drop boxes were reduced from 107 2 years ago to just 25 today in the entire Atlanta area. By law, you can only have one mail-in drop box per 100,000 active voters. That affects only Atlanta. Then the law required the Southern Georgia white counties, required them to increase drop box availability. Massive change in availability of drop boxes, in effect, ripping out the drop boxes from black majority Atlanta counties to the white majority counties. And then they crushed the number of days of early voting. One of the reasons you see those long lines is that we went from 17 days of early voting to 7. And so, of course, you've cut it by way more than half. So, of course, the lines are now doubling. And the rain, which I'm sitting here in the rain right now, the problem with the rain is that, when you have to wait 2.5, 3 hours in line, outside in the rain, a lot of people bring their kids because they have no choice. School's out right now, so you have to, a lot of people are bringing their kids, standing 2 hours in the rain. But when I say standing 2 hours in the rain, that is solely and only in Atlanta. We have online the wait times from around the state. You have 2 hours in every polling station in Atlanta, but then you have outside of Atlanta 10 minutes, 30 minutes. And what happens is in the 10-minute wait, you are inside those buildings, those government buildings and the libraries in those areas. So basically, I'm going to make it clear. White people have a nice, comfy, warm place to stand and vote, quick in and out. African Americans and the people here in Atlanta, the progressives that have come down, they're standing in the rain like that. I mean, it's cruel. It's crazy. This is what they are doing. I mean, they were literally, this type of, so what's happening is they also, they crush the amount of early voting time, et cetera. So they make the lines impossibly crazy long in Atlanta and people standing in the rain. And you go down to Forsyth County. For those who don't know, a place like Forsyth, it's called a sundown. That area is called sundown town. Mm-hmm. That means that African Americans, used to be by law, now it's just because people aren't insane. Black people aren't on the streets after dark because it's dangerous for them. This is Georgia. You leave Atlanta, go 50 miles outside of Atlanta, and you go 50 years back in time. It's hard for people who don't live in Atlanta to understand that this is still an apartheid state. Wow. And that affects the voting. But I have to say, the people of Atlanta, African Americans, students, Asian Americans, a big group, they're saying, we'll stand in the rain. We will stand in the line. And of course, can't give them any food, can't give them any water. If they're 2 hours, stand there in the rain. You got a little kid. No. You give someone's child a glass, a bottle of water, a cup of milk. That's a felony crime in Georgia. They know what they're doing.
Of course.
This is all since Reverend,
which is why Greg
elected 2 years ago.
Which is why when there's a Democratic majority in the House and Senate, they ought to be talking about reinstating pre-clearance in the Voting Rights Act and doing something to protect the rights of people in the South. In particular, black people and people of color.
Which brings me to you, John
Lindsay,
Nichols, and then of course to Rodney Ellis. As county commissioner of one of the largest counties, one of the largest governments, not just in the United States, technically in the world. Uh, John Nichols. I mean, virtually eliminating the mail-in vote. It's so disturbing, John. I mean, and that's why we've been pushing for an executive action on voting rights. Yeah, because we need that, John. Look at this.
Yeah, of course. But you see, it's too late today, right?
Yeah.
All of this is important. And such important reporting from Greg and others. But it's election day. And so the focus on election day, as Reverend Jackson always taught us, is that we don't analyze the election on the day of the election. We tell people you can still change the course of history. And this is the vital message on this day. As Greg says, the weather has not been generous. And the policymakers have been horrific in their actions and in their clearly discriminatory approaches to all this. And yet, people are going to vote. And as Greg mentioned very wisely, people are excited to vote. There's an energy level there. It is going to be tough. It is hard. There is no question of that. But there is also no question that Reverend Raphael Warnock can win this election. Absolutely no question that he can win this election. The only thing that matters now is going out and doing those votes. And folks in Georgia, the reports are that they're doing it, as difficult as it is. And what we have to do on a day like this, and I'm sure that Commissioner Ellis would echo this, is to make sure that people know they can vote, and that if they run into trouble trying to vote, that there's someone there to help them get to that polling place. I always recount a story told to me by a long-time voting rights activist in Georgia a couple of years ago. And she was down there in the previous runoff, the runoff that, by the way, people should be aware, Georgia runoffs changed American history. The runoff that gave Democrats control of the United States Senate 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years ago, with the election of John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock. She was outside a polling place in a smaller college town. And it was a predominantly black student body. And she was talking to folks who were going in and coming out. A young man came out, and he was clearly looked disappointed. And she said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, they wouldn't let me vote. They told me my registration is, not here. It's down where I grew up with my mom." And she said, "Well, where'd you grow up?" And he said, "About 75, 80 miles from here. It's not too far away." And she said, "Give me your cell phone. You got your mom's number on it?" And the young man said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "Call your mother and then hand me the phone." He did. She took the phone and said, "Let's say, Mrs. Smith, they're not letting your son vote up here at his college. You need to come and pick him up, drive him home, make sure that he gets the vote, and then you need to feed him a great dinner, and you drive him back so he can study up for tomorrow's tests and exams." And that mother said, "You bet I will." He got in her car, got her son, he got the vote. And she did that throughout the day there. And they got people to vote. It was terribly difficult. There is nothing right about this. It's not proper. It's not decent. It's not appropriate that people have to go through all of these hoops and all these challenges to vote. And yet the fundamental reality is that young man, that woman who helped him, his mother, they all made it real. They made it possible to cast those ballots, and they changed the course of American history. They elected 2 Democrats to the Senate, gave Democrats control of the Senate, gave President Biden the ability to govern. And so at some fundamental level, what we have to understand today is the day where, and I think listening to what Greg has said and what other folks have said, today's the day you get angry. You get angry enough to push through whatever is in your way and to make sure that you can cast your ballot. Because if Georgia does the right thing today, and I believe Georgia will, then we see a 51-49 Senate. The power sharing agreements are tossed aside. The committee makeups are clearly in the hands of the Democrats. And Joe Manchin, while not disempowered, has less ability to direct the Senate. And so at some fundamental level, everything comes down to Georgia today, and everything comes down to the people who decide that they're not going to let anything get in the way of their voting.
Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, what do you see? I mean, how do you eliminate would an executive order on voting rights, would that have made a difference as we look at this massive drop off in the mail-in vote?
Santita, it would only help. My sense is if an executive order could really do that much, the courts would probably have struck it down. I wanted to come over to Atlanta. I'll give you a listener's little history lesson. About 81, I think, I came to Atlanta when I was working on Capitol Hill. Shirley Chisholm was in the last term in Congress. You only had 2 black members of Congress in the South. Harold Ford Sr. out of Memphis, Mickey Leland out of Houston. Did not have a black congressman in Georgia. When Andy Young went to President Carter's cabinet, White Fowler replaced him.
That's right.
John Lewis was running for city council. Maynard Jackson couldn't run for mayor. Andy was running. That's where I met your dad, by the way. Came here. Maxine Waters was assemblywoman then. And then I think about how Tom Bradley was gearing up as mayor of Los Angeles to run for governor. You know, the Harold Washington race in Chicago, which prompted your dad to run for president. Now, here we are 41 years later. You know, Warnock running. Stacey Abrams should have won. Think about it. If she had run for the Senate instead of encouraging him to run, she would have been there. But she did she did a great thing encouraging him to run. So, look, even people have to stand in lines on this dreary day. For me, coming from Houston, not only is it raining in Atlanta, Georgia, it's cold to me. So, people whose ancestors had to say how many bubbles were coming from a bar of soap, how many jelly beans in a jelly jar, now do have the inconvenience, which pales in comparison. They have the inconvenience that have to stand in the cold and the rain. I hope to do it. Oh, Gene Duffy. I called him when I was trying to decide whether or not to fly over here last night. Duffy said that polling indicates 53%. And then he pointed out how so many polls are wrong. It'll all depend on who shows up. Obviously, early voting initially was for non-voters of color. And then when we got into it and learned it, they changed the rules. Drop-off boxes were initially for other people. And once, our campaign tactics perfected it, they changed it. By the way, the driver's motor voter was additionally for people not of color to register to vote. And then once we learned how to do it, they changed the law on it. Once the courts extended it, saying, well, not only when you get a driver's license, how about when you sign up for benefits? Any government officer, then they changed the rules. So we got to overcome all of that. Greg, I saw some of your movies when I got up this morning. Since I gained an hour, lost an hour. It's an hour later here. So I had a little longer than 1 extra hour, and I watched the trailer. I hope to see that movie later today, but if not, I'll pay and see it later on in the week. But look, I hope something comes out of Georgia. Very positive. And it's so important because, as you all said earlier, we need federal voting rights protections. We need it in Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, California, by the way, at some point. Certain regions, certain counties in California will try to do crazy stuff. And these legislatures, by the way, I'm afraid the Texas legislature will go back in power and try to take away our ability to run elections on a local level. And they may do that in Georgia. It's scary times. We need this extra seat in the U.S. Senate, and then we need to make sure we get strong, financially sound candidates to run 2 years from now, because hopefully we can get the House back and we can get that 52nd seat in the Senate. So neither Sinema nor Manchin will have the influence they have now.
I mean, John Nichols, what's the path forward?
Well, the path forward is to vote today. It's not a complicated thing. This is, I remember, and as Commissioner Ellis wisely recalls, that we are coming up on the 40th anniversary, if we can believe it. We got to pause and think about the 40th anniversary of Harold Washington's victory in Chicago, the transformational victory that told us everything that was possible going forward. That really did inspire your father to run for president.
No, wait. Let me just give you that. We had to push him to run because he was not.
I know.
No. I mean, no, because I think because that's
to run.
but that doesn't diminish him. You know, he was someone who came out of the machine, who'd been kicked out the machine, and he'd been put in the political wilderness. And black people brought him back.
I recall when he was having those meetings. You know, I was Mickey's chief of staff.
Yes.
He was trying to push Maynard. See, Dolores Tucker's name came up. Should Miss Chisholm run again? Should Bradley run? I mean, Reverend Jackson was pushing anybody. Look, they were talking about, well, Dutch Muriel, should you do it? Andy Young, should you do it? And then when nobody else should do it, that's when your daddy had that classic line. He said, you know, they talking about, what does Jesse want? Jesse Reverend had this great line. He said, if I run, I might lose. If I don't run, we do lose. But no, he was clearly drafted because nobody else would do it.
Nobody. I mean, that's all I'm saying, John. I mean, because we remember that because Reverend said other people were more electable than he. So he was like, no, because he had been Carter's chief surrogate in 1980. That's how unpopular Jimmy Carter was. He said, so I know how to run. We know how to do this. And Harold Washington looked at Reverend like he was crazy. He was like, nah, I'm not going to run for mayor of Chicago. What? I'm a congressman now. I'm good. So we have to remember.
And you remember how Congressman Washington had all those issues going back when he was in the Senate. Remember his birthday is April 15th, and he had the tax issue.
Yes,
you know, and all
that's
of that
right.
would come up in the mayor's race, and it did. Hey, and thank God in Illinois and Chicago they didn't have that runoff like we have in the South.
Oh,
like
no.
Warnock.
Well, they did
going through here.
Yeah.
But Commissioner, this brings us back to what I was trying to say here, and the most important thing, and that is that in that 1983 race in Chicago, they had a Democratic primary, but then a huge portion of Democrats went over and voted for the Republican in the general election. So both those elections were close. Both those elections were difficult. And what I want to just emphasize as we talk about Georgia today, as we recall and understand what's going on in Georgia, is the weather wasn't all that great in the winter of 1983 and in the early spring of 1983. Those were tough days in Chicago. I was down there. I remember, and I know Santita does. It was snow and cold and frigid weather and wind, and I saw people coming out to vote on those days, on those horrible days, those very, very difficult days, because they knew how much it mattered if Harold Washington were to win that race for mayor. And
look, you remember what's his name? Old Johnson, the Cadillac dealer Johnson.
Al Johnson, that's right.
That voter registration campaign. Was it Al Johnson?
Al
right?
Johnson and really led by Ed Gardner from Soft Sheen. Remember, he put so much money into it. Yeah.
And look, I'm from Houston, so the weather's always bad to me in Chicago in the winter. Look,
you know what? We're gonna put Jewel, put him on mute.
This is like snow to me over here. What is it over here? 47 degrees.
Oh,
it was 69 when I got on the plane last night.
Oh my God,
John, we're hailing hardy Midwesterners. This man doesn't know what he's doing. You know, goodness gracious, he's complaining.
Hey, my people from close to the equator.
Oh, I know you didn't pull that card. Okay.
I have a bad joke, but I'm not going to say it.
You know what? You guys are you all aren't right.
So cold up there. I ain't gonna say it. That's why slavery lasted so long, because it's so cold up in Chicago.
But we don't go there. And in Texas, we celebrate Juneteenth. We got our freedom.
I know y'all are.
Years late.
They wouldn't even tell you that you were free.
I got to remind him. He signed it on January 1st. That's what the Emancipation Proclamation. But they didn't get the word. They didn't want to kill anybody in Texas.
Oh my gosh, Greg Palast, we got to get people to see this wonderful movie, John Nichols, that he has. You know, and John, we got to put the word out because you can see it without paying for it because of the generosity of Jamie Foxx. Vigilante. I mean, and he's given us this information today that the mail-in mail-in ballots have been virtually eliminated because of the machinations and the laws passed, a codification by Brian Kemp and the Republicans in Georgia. And they're doing this all over the country. They're doing this all over the country because they have overtaken the legislatures.
Well, the movie is so powerful, by the way. I love the trailer with the music. You got me? And the way you do the flashback to Jim Crow, what we have come through. It really, when you just think of how, I guess you call it Jim Crow 2.0, how they put on different suits, more contemporary suits, but the same crowd. They ought to just put the hoods on their heads because it's the same tactic.
Well, John, did you? I mean, because Commissioner Ellis and John and Kevin, he was almost shot in this woman's house, in this lovely Southern woman's house, lovely Southern white woman.
I saw when she was putting you out of the house in the trailer. Who was she?
Right. So, just so people know, this is the film Vigilante, Georgia's vote suppression hitman. And, again, we've shown it in Minneapolis and Chicago, and now thanks to Commissioner Ellis, we'll be showing it in Texas. So you can see it now. By the way, this week is sponsored by the DiCaprio family, George DiCaprio being executive producer, and Leonardo has been promoting the film. It's a movie, so they will pay for the ticket. You pay for the popcorn. And now it's been extended for free through the weekend, from today through the weekend, because we know that in a way Georgia's going to continue. This vote count might continue for several days. It's going to be very, very close. So go to vigilantemovie.com, bring your popcorn, you get a link, you watch the movie. And as the people watching can tell you, it is a movie, so it is entertainment, but it's some of it's very funny and crazy, like this woman who challenged this Republican. And it's important to understand, I'm not being partisan, but every single person who's challenging another voter in Georgia, you have this crazy system in Georgia where you personally, not the state, can challenge another voter. They've challenged so far this year 149,000 people. The film has made a difference because some of the elections officials have seen it and they're saying, we're not accepting these challenges. But it's going to be tight because while I know that you said that, well, Dave Chappelle said, oh, Herschel Walker, you can read stupid on his face. But that's not the point. It is close because I was just down in Coffee County where you come into the county and you're surrounded by Confederate flags, statues to the Confederate soldiers. You are stepping back 100 years in these counties, and they are voting. You have this evangelical right that is voting solid for Herschel Walker because they call him the imperfect vessel. Okay, he may be paying for abortion. He may be beating women, but he is the vessel, the imperfect vessel of the Lord's will. And I'm sorry, I like to listen to Reverend Jackson. I think I think he's a little bit closer to understanding the Lord's will than Herschel Walker.
Well, Herschel Walker is also, to be very serious, he is also someone who's mentally ill. He's someone who I think probably sustained brain injuries while playing football. There's a lot going on with him. Everybody stay tuned to the YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show, so I can get some closing thoughts from this fantastic panel. Love you, everybody. Vote, 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 vote. All right, now, he's got CTE. And he was also, he had dissociative disorder before any of that. He's not a well guy. That's what makes me sad.
It breaks your heart. It really is, because there are issues. There are issues there. Probably ought to be a case study on that issue of who was that they said? Was that somebody said that about President Ford, which wasn't true? Was it LBJ said he played too much football without his helmet?
Oh, you mean Gerald Ford, who kept
Gerald Ford
doing things that made you go, huh?
But I don't think that was the case with him. But that many athletes, by the way, we now know those traumatic head injuries have led to problems with people.
Absolutely.
Same way with boxing. Now there are rules in place, so that we try to protect people for that entertainment they provide us, a good living for themselves. But sometimes you have to ask, is it worth the price? But the fact that Trump would go out and recruit Herschel Walker,
But why do you think he did that?
Embarrassing that the Republican, because he wants somebody he could control. He's just looking for a famous name. You got me? That's what it was.
But don't you think he could have found a more polished black Republican who could have given Raphael Warnock a run for his money in Georgia?
That's some over there on Trump's side too. I mean, that's some brain issues over there on his side as well.
Well, can I just jump in here and say though that this gets to the heart of what Donald Trump has done throughout this last year. He recruits celebrities whose names he knows. Donald Trump isn't interested in doing the serious work of politics, right? He's not. It is no.
He can control. He wants people he can control.
Exactly. He likes candidates that whose names he knows, who he can recruit, and who will be responding to him politically. And that's the fundamental reality of this thing. And look, he recruited J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance is going to be a U.S. senator.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, but Herschel, image-wise, represents the stereotype that most racist white people fear.
Yes.
He's a menacing, black, rapist, brutalizer of white women. God, I'm just like trying to wrap my brain around evangelicals as racist.
Vote for him. When they're in a hurry, you got me. It shows how people have to be vetted. I mean, it's amazing. Look, I've been in politics all my life. Everybody has something in their background they'd like to keep there. But if you have a brain, if the skeletons are just there with the key, they don't even have to bang on the door. The skeletons in there with the key. They say, "Come on, get in the race. I'll open the door." So just don't do it. You got me? Everybody can find something in their childhood. You know what I mean? They say, hey, they didn't just chop down the cherry tree. They stole all of the cherry candies out of the store. Well, if charges were filed, don't run.
Well, this is Greg. I just want to remind people, and here's whether we have to face the music on this one. Out of over 4 million votes, Raphael Warnock only beat Walker by 35,000 votes in November. That's it. Less than half a percentage point. So it is, we may think, how could anyone vote for a guy like Herschel Walker? And certainly the black community here is really upset by in fact, handing white people this crazy stereotype. I agree. But it's a squeaker. It was,
But black people having amnesia.
November, and they're doing everything they have.
No, black folks have amnesia. Let me tell you what. This is where we keep thinking that degree trumps pedigree. They put black people in one basket. That is why we're in a tighter than this race, or so it appears at this time. They see Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker as the same beast, if you will. They do. Many white people, that's what they see. Yeah. What? I just think we need to be honest about that. We look at black people see Raphael Warnock, Morehouse man, Alpha man, Ebenezer, a doctorate, all that. That's what we see. Many white folks see. Wait. Let me give you this story. Okay, everybody, I hope you're still there. Real quick. This is in the 80s, maybe 90s. Reverend said, I was kind of feeling good about myself this particular day. I had addressed the United Nations, and I was taking President Robert Mugabe and his wife over to Bill and Community's home for dinner. I'm staying at the Waldorf in Presidential Tower. Oh, okay. Done that many times before. So as he's on the elevator, and anyone who's been to the Waldorf, that the Presidential Tower, the elevator has an elevator man. There's someone who operates the elevator for you. You don't need them, but they have them there. That's the courtesy. And this lovely white lady toddled on to the elevator. And my father said, "Ma'am, how are you?" She said, "Oh, fine." And she said, "You're going to the lobby?" "Yes, I am." So as he's about to get to the lobby and he's about to get into the limousine with the president of Zimbabwe and his wife, who had been, because they're in Washington, they're in New York for, the week where all the heads of state are at the United Nations. And he has just given the keynote address there that day. And the woman walks over to him, toddles over, and she said, "Thank you so much," and pressed $1 in his hand.
I took the dollar.
He did.
I hope he took it. All right, there you go.
Now, mind you, in 1988, CNN stopped identifying Reverend Jackson on television. They stopped putting his name there and they only do that with about 5 or 6 living people, because he's one of the most recognized people on earth. This woman gave him $1 for helping her on the elevator.
Well served.
Kid, I got to tell you, this is Greg. I just want to tell you one story that is really opened my eyes. I went to a meeting in Baltimore, and with my assistant young lawyer, an African American young man who had been president of the law school class, Dwayne Andrews, great guy. And we went to the meeting. And we were both in jeans because it was a Saturday. I said, "You don't have to dress up for this meeting." And we go up to the desk together. And I say, "I'm going upstairs. We have a meeting." And the door attendant said to my assistant, who's my lawyer, that, "Oh," he turned to this young black man and says, "Delivery's around the back." And you know what where the meeting was?
That's pretty common.
It was the NAACP headquarters.
I can't tell you the number of times in my life I've heard, "Do you work here?" I generally help people when they ask me that question. I'm like, "Do you work here?" I kind of feel good about it in some way. At least I look like
you have a job.
Yeah, I have a job.
Oh my gosh! But that's what I mean. I think they see them in one basket, Kevin and Commissioner Ellis and Greg Palast and John Nichols. They see these two guys, and it was a friend of mine who helped me to see that. He said, "Oh no!" He said, "Don't take off your thinking cap." Now, these people see Herschel and Raphael Warnock as the same, and I think that's true.
Well, I told you last night, even in considering Warnock's pedigree and his credentials, I'm like, man, is that choice between a black preacher and a black jock? I said that is pretty stereotypical.
Well, but our leadership has come from the black church. So I mean, because they're the ones who are free enough to do it, and you're paid by black people. And the part of the challenge we have today is we have corporatized leadership in the black community, and it's leading us into a wall. And therefore, because America depends upon us to make it democratic and to make it more progressive. So there we are. We've been corporatized. Boom.
Oh yeah. Remember that whoever wins today in Georgia becomes the senator for everyone. That changes. That's what I keep telling Georgians here. When you're voting today, you're voting for me in California. That changes my Senate. But it really is. There's a great culture war here, and we can't ignore that. A lot of it, issues like, in my film, you see these guys who are worried about these. The guy holds up a Georgia secession flag. I found out this guy works at a poultry factory. He has no health insurance. He has nothing. But he thinks that if he's white and he's got the Georgia secession flag, he's something.
No, he thinks that he doesn't have to have the flag now. Wait. He just thinks that if he thinks that if he's white, he's all right. And the system is showing these folks that that's not true. It's always done that. I mean, John, that's why I'm trying to wrap my mind around all of this. Like 400 years into this American project, I'm like, we don't get it.
Well, let's just pause. I think it's important to note that I think they recruited Herschel Walker because they figured you go get a blackface, not just a celebrity name, but they figured the way to dampen enthusiasm for Warnock was to go get an African American face. I think this is an opportunity where we show, in some ways, we as a people, African Americans in particular, people of color, have gone beyond race. I think we saw that in the Ossoff race in many ways. Because you can go find a black face. You can find somebody who looks like you who talk crazier than the people who held you back. but you got a thoughtful, progressive minister, civil rights background, could have made a lot of money with his talent, ability to communicate in the corporate world. He chose to follow his faith. There's just so much on the ballot in Georgia. And I just hope people in Georgia are listening to your show. They'll get out and vote, stand in line. I don't care how cold.
Oh, they will. They will.
You know, go
They
to it.
will. I didn't hear one person complain in those 2-hour lines. In fact, I asked people, is this unfair? Is this wrong? He said, we don't care. We're voting.
Yeah.
Well,
And they got to pack that water. We can't go give them a cup of coffee. They better take that coffee with them. Yeah, that's right.
I think the Democratic Party's lucky in Georgia with Walker because they could have run a Tim Scott-like character.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Because you can because black people are socially conservative. John Nichols, Kevin Gray, Commissioner Ellis, and we are Greg. We are not. We have been locked in with liberals and progressives because of race and racism. That's it. When you listen to Tim Scott,
I'm staying at Mac Wilborn's house. I'm staying at Mac Wilborn's house, and I'm looking at a post here he has of Maynard. But I think it is Senator Frank. Maynard had the unmitigated gall to run against, was it Talmadge?
Yeah.
He ran for the United States Senate. And much to everybody's surprise, maybe including him, he carried Atlanta, and that's why he turned around and ran for the council, and then being that minute and ran for mayor. You got me? So, so much history here in Georgia, and such an opportunity, just so much on the ballot. And look, this state elected its first Muslim, I think, female. I can't remember if she's in the House or the Senate. It's a different Georgia. You got a Hispanic or two in the legislature, which is why the other side is fighting so hard trying to hold on to power. Because in this city of Atlanta, in the state of Georgia, we have seen that people of color can govern and do well. And they are mature enough to support people who are not necessarily of color, but are progressive, who want to move this state forward. And I think that's what we need to move this country forward.
This is the most sophisticated voting population I've seen in the United States, in Atlanta. It is quite amazing. They are educated. They know what's going on. They're not fooled by, you're going to give us a guy because he has a certain skin tint. They're not fooled. I'm quite amazed. Walker's totally flatlined with the African American vote completely. Their trick that they try to pull hasn't worked. The problem is that they have a massive white evangelical vote. And when you're here and you get out of Atlanta, boy, it is a different world. And that's
in Georgia. In Georgia.
Drop their jaws. How does Herschel Walker come up within half a percentage point in that general election? It's going to be brutal. And especially, there's all these impediments. I agree. People will and are right now standing in the rain. They don't care. But it's going to be brutal. And not because of the rain. It's going to be brutal because of this idea that, Herschel Walker, it's team sport. Donald Trump held a virtual rally last night, and you'd think, who's going to listen to this guy? He just called for repealing the Constitution. But they do.
In the Georgia, in the part of their seal, they have wisdom, justice, and moderation. What in the heck in 1788 was the moderation part for? So here's a culture of taking so. But Georgia has just leaped into this century big time. I mean, you just go back. Imagine the Hope Scholarship came out of Georgia. That was a Democratic governor. But can you imagine how forward thinking that was? Everybody with a B coming out of high school with a B average had free college tuition. That's what created that brain trust that you have that has propelled this state's economy going forward. But so tremendous opportunity here.
Yeah, there is so much. But can I just remember one thing about Georgia that I think is important
John
in
Nichols?
this regard, and that is one thing about Georgia that what Commissioner Ellis is saying is so important, that Georgia has progressed. He hasn't progressed it recently. I mean, Atlanta was breaking through back in the 60s and 70s. Remember, this is the state that produced Jimmy Carter. Not because Carter was perfect, far from perfect, but he was a face of the New South. So Georgia's been on a good track for a long time. But as we talk about Georgia bursting out in the 21st century, we have to remember one fundamental reality, and that is that Georgia has retained the runoff, right? The runoff was designed to dilute and undermine black voting power in the South and liberal and progressive voting power in the South. That's why the runoff was created. And people need to remember that Raphael Warnock, when he wins tonight, he will have won his Senate seat 4 times in 2 years. He won in 2020. He won in 2021. He won in November of 2022, and now he faces the challenge of winning in December of 2022. That runoff, which does not exist in other states, has required Raphael Warnock, even in the 21st century, to have to jump over barriers that other senators don't have to jump over. He will be elected to the Senate with a higher percentage than many of his colleagues. And
thinking in terms of priorities, I think who was the governor? It was Barnes. Governor Barnes, when they got rid of the Confederate flag in Georgia, remember how excited we were, how proud we were? As I look back on it, maybe they should have gotten rid of the runoff and saved the flag until later. He lost over the flag.
Yeah. And look, the thing about the runoff, the last thing I'll say is the runoff was created with the idea that, the most constant voters would cast their ballot, right? And in those days, they thought that was going to be the white folks, right? Well, one of the things that's really important to understand is if you look at data from across the country, what you will find now is that black voters, particularly black women, are constant voters. They are our steadiest voters. They are our most likely to show up. And that is why, as Greg recounts, there's so many barriers have been erected because, there's so many problems. But the fact of the matter is now, this is the day. This is the day to turn that runoff against those who created it and to get out there and cast those ballots, because the fact of the matter is, if Raphael Warnock wins tonight, he will be the most elected member of the U.S. Senate. 4 victories in 2 years, 2 of them because of runoffs. But people need to understand that's what they have to overcome, but that's what they can overcome. And then, as Commissioner Ellis points out, then we have to get around the work of talking about runoffs themselves. Talking, Reverend Jackson,
right? In terms of what's
been 88.
Yeah, he'll be well over $1 billion in his campaign, well over. But I think about Illinois. By the way, Harold Washington wouldn't have made it if he'd had to have a runoff in the Democratic primary. Barack Obama wouldn't have become a senator and would not have ended up being president. Isn't that amazing? Now, by the way, if the runoff ends up being to our advantage, then
don't change it around.
Then they'll get rid of it. Just like mail-in voting. The Republicans used to vote mail. Listen, this is Greg Palast. I got to jump because I got to get out there.
Let them know about the movie, Greg.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'm grabbing my hat and raincoat.
Let them know about the movie.
Are you in Atlanta or where are you? If you're in Atlanta, call me. I mean, I'm going to fly out to
I'm in.
But here, call me.
Wait. Hold on.
Go to Santita. Yep.
Okay, hold on. Wait a minute. Do you all have each other's contact information? We're not going to give it out because it was still on Facebook.
Send him mine. You send him. I think I'm here, but send him mine. I'm in Atlanta today. I'm going to fly back to Texas by 10 o'clock tonight.
Oh, well, but Greg is down there.
Yep, I'm here in Atlanta. I'm down in the Grant Park area right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Midtown, but Mr. Mac Wilborn just went. He runs these airport concessions. He went to work. He said I came in the campaign. He said he already campaigned. He does the fundraisers. So as soon as when we get off the show, I'll call you. Santita.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right now so that you all will have each other's information. Call him now.
Okay.
Does anyone have anything else? Okay, had to come back on so I could say goodbye. Do you see all the trouble I've been having today trying to stay up? Oh, Laura, I'm sending you much love as you go out there and vote. Just bundle up and stay warm, okay? Georgia is in the house and it's on our minds. Everybody get out and vote. Let people know that they need to vote. Remember, vote.org. Find out if you're still registered. But even if you find that you've been purged from the polls, purged from the voter rolls, shall I say, go to the polls and call 1-866-OUR-VOTE and get directions from these lawyers who will walk you through how you can cast your vote legally. That's the point. So let everybody know about 1-866-OUR-VOTE, 1-866-OUR-VOTE, or vote.org. They should now call 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Just go to the polls. That's all you need to do. Just go. I love you, everybody. Cannot wait to be with you tomorrow. Oh, yes. Love you, Jewel. Love you, Laura. Love y'all. Love you, Daryl. Love you, everybody. I cannot wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless.